Okay, good evening. This is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. This is the Truth Attack Hour, and yes, that's right. We're back with the Truth Attack. We are the Liberty Works Radio Network, and we do need the support of the members of the listening audience to keep the network operating and the broadcast coming. So, if you enjoy the shows, the information, the topics, the discussions, and the guests on the other shows, we sure would appreciate it if you could find your way over to the LibertyWorksRadioNetwork.com website and get signed up as a monthly subscribing member. Even if it's as low as $10, $20 a month, every membership counts, and we do need your help to keep spreading the word of liberty and freedom across the United States. Of America. So if you want to help educate America, tell your friends, neighbors, family, relatives, workmates, tell them all to tune in and listen and get informed. And if you want to find out why the federal income tax is no longer enforceable in the courts because of the new law passed by Donald Trump in Congress in December of 2017, you need to find your way over to tax-freedom.com and start reading, or find your way over to irszoom.com and pick yourself up a copy of The Simple Truth About Income Tax. Version 2.0 is now out. It's a 100-page PDF download document that destroys the IRS, the DOJ, and the federal judges by exposing the fraud that they have perpetrated on the American people for the last 65 years under the guise and pretense of taxation under the 16th Amendment as a direct tax on the labor of the American people. It's a complete and total fraud. It's got nothing to do with constitutional taxation. They've been enforcing the second plank of the Communist Manifesto on Americans for 65 years, forcing you to practice communism to support the socialist welfare state they've erected and are now using to buy the votes of 10 million newcomers, illegal aliens who have been trying to vote just as fast as they can get registered in the states that let them vote in state elections. Only state elections. Sure, right, check. It's a Democrat assault on the American people to steal the country and make it a permanent Democrat Party institution that steals from the productive and uses the proceeds to enrich themselves, their business partners, and to buy the votes of the poor, which are deceived into living in the plantation projects and voting endlessly for Democrats that continuously work to destroy their neighborhoods by allowing crime to run rampant, debt to run amok, and prioritizing the budget expenditures for illegal aliens instead of American citizens. That's the Democrat Party. One great, big, huge fraud. And it all starts and it all ends with the American people's awareness of what the income tax really is, what it has been all along, and what it has never been, which is what they've been enforcing on you. A direct tax on labor that isn't even a tax, because the money doesn't go in the United States Treasury. It goes around the Treasury to the Federal Reserve Bank. That's why you don't have any credit for tax paid before you file on April 15th. None of the money collected as tax from your paycheck by your employer was ever deposited in the Treasury. But if it were tax, that would violate Title 26, Section 7809, which says every penny collected for tax has to be deposited in the Treasury on a daily basis. So how come no tax has been paid based on all the so-called tax withheld from your paychecks? Why didn't it go in the Treasury? The law says collected tax has to go in the Treasury. Your employer told you it was tax. They took it from you telling it was tax. Clearly that's collected tax. Why didn't it end up in the Treasury being credited to your name and account? Because it's not tax. The money was routed around the Treasury to the Federal Reserve Bank to service the $36 trillion in debt Congress has unconstitutionally borrowed from the monopolistic bankers. It's got nothing to do with taxation. It's a peonage debt service system where the labors of the American people are being collectively used to collateralize the $36 trillion. And as long as the Federal Reserve bankers see the American people allowing their labors to be collectively used to collateralize that debt, they will continue to lend money and drive you deeper and deeper into debt. The interest is already, today, the largest expenditure you have. It's bigger than your defense budget. It's bigger than the welfare. In a few more years, it will consume every single penny of the federal budget. It will be unserviceable. And that's where the money's going. To enslave your children, your grandchildren, and you for the rest of your life. So everybody in America needs to wake up and end this system by becoming aware of what I'm selling for $6 in The Simple Truth About Income Tax at irszoom.com, a 100-page PDF that blows it wide open. It explains to you what the consequences are and why of the new tax law as of January 2018. It explains what was really done in 1913 under the original income tax legislation, which was a tariff act. The tariff being one form of an impost, which is the power to tax foreign persons, foreign imports, and foreign activity. Which is why the tax was never collected from American citizens before World War II, before the end of World War II. The first time taxation touched the labor of the American people was the Victory Tax of 1942, a temporary 2-year war revenue measure to fund World War II, pay down the bond debt. So there is no tax imposed on your labor. There never has been. It's all a fraud perpetrated by the Department of Justice, the Internal Revenue Service, and the lower courts of the federal judiciary, particularly those out west like the Ninth Circuit, the Communist Court. It hands down nothing but socialist rulings that violate the Constitution. We saw that repeatedly in the last Trump administration, where every time they didn't like something Trump tried to do, they'd file suit out west and go to the Ninth Circuit. The Ninth Circuit would stop it, and the Supreme Court would tell the Ninth Circuit to sit down, shut up, and go home. You got it all wrong. Repeatedly, we saw the Ninth Circuit rulings being tossed by the Supreme Court. And we're seeing it today with throwing out Roe v. Wade, which was made up by a liberal court. They threw out affirmative action, which was made up by a liberal court. They threw out regulatory deference, which was made up by a liberal court. And they're going to have to throw out the income tax, which was made up by a liberal court as a direct tax without limitation. It's never been a direct tax under the 16th Amendment. It's impossible for that to be true because there's no enabling enforcement clause in the amendment to authorize Congress to write any new law to enforce any new power. And if you're claiming it's a direct tax under the amendment without limitation, that's a new power because every direct tax before the amendment had to be apportioned to the states and laid in proportion to the census. If those limitations are removed from direct taxation as a function of the 16th Amendment, that's a new power to tax, and as such it would take its own enabling enforcement clause in the amendment to authorize Congress to write law to enforce that new power. No such clause exists because no such power was ever granted, no such power was ever intended. And the courts have been lying to you and stealing your wages, your fruits of labor, your rent, your dividends, none of this is taxable. None of this is taxable. It's all a fraud. Section 61, gross income, that the courts have pretended makes all of those sources taxable to you, never was enacted with applicability within the 50 states. It wasn't part of the original legislation in 1913. Section 61 didn't exist until 1918 when it was enacted as part of the Canadian Tax Treaty that lasted for 75 years from 1918 to 1993 when it expired and was replaced with NAFTA. And for those 75 years, it required Americans working in Canada to pay income tax. didn't require citizens in the 50 states. The government's got no jurisdiction to tax there, but it can tax under a treaty in a foreign country, and that's what it did. And this information is exposed, and you have the documents to prove it in The Simple Truth About Income Tax. And you have the documents to prove that it was enacted in a limited territorial space. I have the original Underwood-Simmons Treaty document, which redefines the United States as the territories, not the 50 states. And your withholding agent, the tax collector created in the law in 1913, still today has no authority to collect tax from citizens. None. No authority to collect the tax from citizens because they were never made subject to it. Because you have a right to work, and the fruits of labor derived from the simple exercise of that right have never been the proper subject of federal taxation, nor are they the object of any federal tax. Income is not the object, nor is it the subject of taxation. It is the yardstick that measures the amount of tax owed on the earnings derived from the federally taxable activity subject to some impost, duty, or excise. And income measures the amount of tax owed as duty, impost, or excise. Impost taxes foreign persons, foreign imports, foreign activity, and in foreign places. Duty taxes exported goods. Excise taxes commodities, licenses, and corporations. Alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. Where's the tax on labor under Article 1? It doesn't exist. It never existed. It's not a direct tax that's paid by the wage earner. It's an indirect tax that is collected at the source. The whole Supreme Court decision of Rishaber is a discussion about how it's a collection of the tax at the source. There's no direct taxation. And 32 years later, in 1945, they implemented the same scheme of collection at the tax at the source, only this time, in 1942, they imposed no tax. They just set up a system where an uninformed and uneducated employee, naive and gullible, as you have been made by your high school, public school educations, will allow the withholding of tax that is not imposed on his earnings and that he is not subject to the payment of, nor liable for the payment to the Treasury. But if you allow the withholding on an allowance certificate, an employee's withholding allowance certificate, Form W-4, if you allow it, you create a presumption, an appearance of subjectivity that then enslaves you for the rest of your life. When you're 16, don't write single and zero, write exempt. This is the key for the black youth to escape the enslavement of the white institutions, the man, the system. This is the key for the black youth to escape. White youth tend to go to college. They're exempt for the first 4 years they're working because they're full-time students. If not, they should be claiming exempt too. So when you get that first job at McDonald's, don't write single and zero. Claim exempt. And learn why from the $6 book, The Simple Truth About Income Tax. Pick yourself up a copy and learn why. It'll be the best $6 you ever spent in your life. IRSZoom.com. Learn about your money. Learn about your rights. Learn about the tax that doesn't exist, except in the minds of corrupt and seditious judges and treasonous Department of Justice attorneys who have weaponized the legal system against the free American people to turn them into slaves and virtual peons as serfs working on the plantation. This is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. We'll be back in 5 minutes. I think I hear that first commercial break coming up. So get yourself signed up. Get yourself over to IRSZoom.com and pick yourself up a copy of The Simple Truth About Income Tax, version 2.0. It's only $6. Okay. Bathroom. Okay, this is Thomas Fried on the Liberty Works Radio Network. Now let's just get right back into it. Freedom comes from God, not government. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. For God's true plan for mankind is freedom, achieved through faith in God and an accurate knowledge of the truth. And if you misplace your faith in any other entity, man, philosophy, nation, king, emperor, czar, your faith will be used against you to betray you and enslave you to whatever entity you have misplaced your faith in. And that's the history of government. So if you want to be free from the chains of economic enslavement that you currently suffer under through the income tax, the unconstitutional class warfare system that has destroyed unified representation in this country, you need to get informed, and you need to encourage the rest of America to become informed, because it is through an expanded conscious knowledge, conscious awareness and knowledge of the truth about these matters that you will be set free. And only through an exercise of truth and knowledge will you be freed from this system. The politicians aren't going to do it for you. They've already done it. It's up to you to wake up and know it and understand it. They can no longer enforce the tax, claiming it's a direct tax under the 16th Amendment, the constitutional authority statement for the new law, which included repealing the old law and enacting the new law under Article 1, Section 8, Clause 1, impost duty and excise. There's no tax on labor anymore. No attorney in the country can defend or argue it. But it's up to you, America, to know it and act on a knowledge of the truth with faith in God, that your fellow men will also understand and act on the knowledge of the truth in pursuit of the free spirit that you were promised the right to be under the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, the founding documents to our system of what's supposed to be unified representation. One law for everyone, not class warfare that divides the people and the politicians permanently. The whole system is socialism. It's intended to divide the people and keep you arguing amongst yourselves so you don't notice it's the political class looting the treasury and enriching themselves and their cronies at your expense. And they've been operating to destroy the quality of life for the last 4 years. Okay, let's move on. We got a lot happening here in the news. Let's just throw it out there. Biden's got a new game plan. It's exactly what I told you he was going to do. Hunter has pleaded guilty to the 9 tax charges in court. You know why? Because they got to get him sentenced before Joe Biden leaves office so that Joe can pardon Hunter. And I still say Joe's going to prison if he doesn't resign and let Kamala be president at least for 1 month. See, with the sentencing at December 16th, Joe would need to wait till then he can pardon Hunter. He can resign. Kamala can step in, be president for a month, even after the election. It'll only be for a month. And she can pardon Joe, so that Trump, the new president, won't have his DOJ send Joe to jail for all the money and money laundering and influence peddling he did, taking $25 million from China, the Ukraine. They have the checks, they have the money, they have the bank receipts, they've got all the money, all the evidence they need to convict him. They have the bank records, and there's more coming. They can trace the money flows. If they want to put Joe in prison, they can. And he's going to prison, unless he cuts a deal with Kamala to let her be president for 1 month, even though the election will be over, and I suspect Trump will win, because I don't think Kamala can win in swing states. I don't think any Democrat can win in the swing states. Democrats have annihilated America, opened the border, increased the price of energy, unleashed inflation, unleashed crime, war, endless war with no objective and no end in sight, supporting the terrorists in Hamas, in Gaza. How can you support this party? I mean, you have to be blind, rage, insane about Donald Trump's New York braggadocio personality to ignore the policy consequences of the Biden administration and the differences in the policy consequences of the previous Trump administration when the economy was booming, up until the Democrats used COVID as an excuse to shut down everything to get rid of Donald Trump. And then they mishandled everything, from energy to the wall, to the pipeline, to crime, to immigration, to spending. So Joe's going to jail, unless it plays out the way I laid it out a while ago for you. He pardons Hunter, resigns, Kamala steps in and pardons Joe, and now Trump can't go after him. She gets to be the first female president, the first Asian woman. And surprise, now the Democrats know what a woman is. Oh, when Kamala runs, now they know. For the last 4 years, they didn't know, but now they know. And is she an arrogant piece of, oh my God, bovine scatology? I mean, really. No reporters, no questions, no policies, no answers. 15 minutes with CNN to talk about what? Nothing. I'm going to help the middle class. You liar! You destroyed the middle class. You're giving the money to the illegal aliens. You're letting the crime run rampant. You've closed the businesses and run them out of the cities. You're prioritizing budget for the aliens over citizens. Your energy policy is what started the inflation wave, and your excessive spending is what drove it to 9%. And now you won't answer any questions or tell the American people what your policies are. She claims to be for small business, but she wants to let the Trump tax cuts expire, which will raise the tax rate from 20 to 40%. 100% increase on small businesses. How's that going to help them? She wants a capital gains tax of 44%. How's that going to help them? She wants a 24% tax on unrealized gains. How's that going to help a small business? They grow quickly. How are you going to evaluate unrealized gains in a small business without stock? What are you going to do if you put it on stock? Are you going to give refunds next year for unrealized losses? How much fraudulent accounting do you think that will generate? What an idiot! Price controls. Oh yeah, government, hey, they're going to fix the price of food. Check. They're going to fix the price of energy. Check. You mean like in Cuba where there is no energy or food? Like in North Korea where there's no energy or food? Like in China where only the Communist Party has energy and food? Check. Small business. Liar! She's just making crap up as fast as she can. Oh, I'm going to help the middle class. Oh, we're going to bring. Oh, I'm not for ending fracking. Liar! Oh, I want to put the criminals. I prosecuted. Liar! You're the one letting them walk. You put up the bail fund to bail out the looters and the rioters and the arsonists in Milwaukee. Everything this woman says is a lie, a straight up lie. And she can't pass any of these policies in Congress. She's just making making it up, just like Joe. We're going to give away money, student loan. You don't have the authority to spend money like that. Where do you get the authority to prioritize budgeting for illegal aliens? That wasn't in the budget. They're just stealing the money. And they're stealing America because they're registering these illegal aliens and they're counting them in the census, which deprives American citizens of their rightful representation numbers because they're leaving California, Illinois, New York, and Massachusetts. But their congressional representation numbers won't go down because they're being replaced with illegal aliens who are being registered to vote in state elections but won't know the difference and have already been told to vote for Joe. Especially if you want welfare and more money, which they've been passing out to the illegal aliens. You want more money? Vote for Joe. 10 million attempts to register to vote without ID have been made in the last 2 years. 10 million attempts. Oh, but they're not registering to vote. No. Those are 10 million citizens who couldn't find a way to DMV to get a state ID or a driver's license. Democrats think they must have been black, huh? It's absolutely insane. Every black person in the country knows how to get ID and can. And they all do. Oh, and the Democrats, what hypocrites. You needed ID to get into the Democrat convention. They didn't want any protesters or unauthorized, uninvited guests or disturbances. You needed ID to get into the Democrat Party convention. But they don't want any ID to vote. They don't want any ID to vote. Oh, I see. And they all have fences around their houses. But they don't want one on the border to control the criminals, the gangs, and illegal aliens. They're not the criminals. What, are you kidding me? Every single one of the cartels are illegal aliens. They're running the crime networks in every city in the country. Well, they don't commit crime. You lying piece of... They are the crime. They are the crime. And they're here because you let the 10% of them sneak in with the 90% that aren't the criminals. But yeah, they are the criminals. They're the cartels. They're killing 100,000 Americans a year, and the Biden administration is registering them to vote. They're laughing so hard while banking the millions. And of course, she's lying. And she says she's not going to raise taxes on the middle class. Just like Joe. They're both lying. By letting the Trump tax cuts expire, you raise taxes on the middle class, and they're both for letting the tax expire. And if by some ungodly catastrophe she does get elected, probably she'd get a Democrat Congress, and she'll sign anything they send her. She won't refuse to raise taxes. If the Democrat Congress writes a bill to raise taxes, she'll sign it. If they write a bill to end fracking, she'll sign it. If they write a bill to end leases, she'll sign it. If they write a bill to spend money flying more illegal aliens in from Venezuela, she'll sign it. If they write a bill to process in 1 million, 2 million, 3 million a year, she'll sign it. She'll sign anything the Democrat Congress, because she stands for nothing. Nothing. She's a pandering, pathological liar who slept her way through California politics and politicians, starting with Willie Brown and Montel. Oh my God. She could end up president for 1 month. Okay, this is Thomas Freed. We'll be back in 5 minutes after the commercial break. Get signed up.
to from the desk.
or they're so evil, they've done it intentionally. It's absolutely insane what these people have done. Driving up the price of energy, intentionally shutting down the pipeline, shutting down permits and leases, turning off leases, slow-walking permits, barring more exploration, putting in more regulations. All of these things in an attempt to drive America to an electrified grid when there's no grid. EVs are just going to overload the grid and shut it down entirely, just like in California where they got rolling brownouts all the time because of too much demand and not enough production. If you're going to go and electrify the country, you need to build nuclear power plants, between 50 and 100 of them, to provide the grid to do that. And until you do that, any talk of doing that is a fraud. And anything that moves in that direction is going to do nothing but exactly what happened 4 years ago. It's going to raise the price of gasoline, diesel oil, which is going to raise the price of every product on every shelf in every store in every city in the country. It's going to raise the price of the utilities. It's going to raise the price of transportation. It's going to raise the price of everything. And the only way to bring those prices down is what Donald Trump laid out today, to cut the price of energy in half with a drill baby drill program. Renew the permits, fast walk them instead of slow walk them. Redo the leases, encourage exploration and drilling and production. Don't punish it. Allow fracking, get the gas, turn energy independence back on, produce more than you need, and become an energy supplier. And that swings the balance on the control of the price of energy worldwide, from Saudi Arabia that wants it high to America that likes it low. Cheap energy is everything. It's your economy. It's your growth in economy. It's your ability to pay good wages. It's your jobs. It's your farms being able to grow food on cheap diesel fuel. It's your trucking operations that move the goods. It's your national security because it provides for enough fuel for the military to run. It doesn't deplete the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which is now at levels since like 1957. Biden drained it down for political advantage to try and slow the increase of oil, but it didn't. He just drained the reserve so that now there isn't enough for the military to operate if it had to conduct multiple theater operations, which it looks like it might. Cheap energy is everything. It's your quality of life. It's your transportation. It's your utilities, your comfort, your heat in the winter, your AC in the summer. It's your profit margin at work. If energy is expensive, the profit is eaten up by the additional cost. If energy is cheap, there's additional profit because you can make more for less. And economies of scale work for you. Cheap energy is everything. It's your freedom. Because without cheap energy, you'll be dependent upon the federal government. And if you don't support them, they won't support you. Sound familiar? Yeah, that's what they do in Cuba, Russia, China, North Korea, Iran. Yeah, that's how it goes, doesn't it? Over and over and over again. Cheap energy is everything. If you want your economy back, if you want your freedom back, if you want your quality of life back, if you want business growth back, you got to vote for Donald Trump and let him turn on the energy industry in America. Drill, baby, drill. That's how we get back to a booming economy. The Biden administration has been lying to you for 4 years. There haven't been strong jobs. They just amended the numbers down. 819,000 jobs. Nearly 1 million jobs were wiped off the books. They were falsely reported. over the last 18 months as having been created when they weren't. They haven't added any jobs. They've lost them. All the jobs that were gained by, yeah, that's right, the non-resident aliens, the foreigners. Americans lost 1 million jobs. Foreigners got 1.5 million. You don't see a trend developing here that doesn't bode well for the American people? Cheap energy is everything. Kamala Harris gets in office, she'll ban fracking. She's lying when she says she's not against it. She hasn't said that. Some aide came out and said it. She can say, I never said that. And no one in the mainstream media has held her accountable for it. And look at what's happening in the mainstream media now and over at that weaponized Justice Department. Here we go again. Russia, Russia, Russia. Merrick Garland must have just loved the Brady Bunch, huh? Here we go again. Russia, Russia, Russia. The Justice Department is saying that Russia is trying to interfere in the election. It's not Iran or China, it's Russia. And of course we know the truth, don't we? It was the mainstream media and the Democrats that interfered in the last election, not the Russians. It was the mainstream media and the Democrats who denied that the laptop was true and got 51 security experts to lie to the American people, because that's all they do is lie and say it looked like Russian did. They knew it was real. The FBI had it. They sat on the evidence. They hid it from the American people in order to usher in this socialist, dementia-ridden fool that the world has been laughing at, who 2 months ago was perfectly fine. He was good. He was upbeat. He was right on point. He was there every day. He was the hardest working man in government. And then all of a sudden, he's too dementia-ridden to run for office. And oh, by the way, where is Waldo? Oh, that's right. He's hiding in the basement for 4 years. Or with his head buried in the sand at the beach. Dementia causing him to try and eat the sandwiches there. Oh my God. It was the Democrats who did the election interference. Not Trump, not the Russians, the Democrats. Hillary Clinton staged the dossier. Not the Russians, Hillary Clinton. Everyone, the mainstream media, the Democratic Party, the 51, they all lied about Hunter's laptop. Everything on that thing is true, and he's guilty of sin. And like I say, he pled guilty today to the 9 charges. Failure to file, tax evasion, failure to pay. There should be a few conspiracy charges in there too, but I guess they're letting him off on that one. So that's who's committing the election interference, is Merrick Garland and the Department of Justice. And Jack Smith with new charges from an office that doesn't exist. He was an unconstitutional appointment. How can any court let him file when it's been ruled he doesn't hold office? You have to overcome that ruling before you can let him file anything. Oh, that's right, it's a Democrat judge. They don't care that it's unconstitutional. It's all about slander. Anything to slander Donald Trump. Unconstitutional trial where you don't even tell him what he's accused of until after the trial, and the defendant can no longer speak because they've issued their closing argument before the state. And that's when they tell him what the charge is based on. That's as rigged as it gets, people. Donald Trump is 100% innocent, and he was 100% convicted by an unconstitutional process. And it's the Democrats that stole the last election with lying about the laptop in Russia, Russia, Russia. It wasn't Donald Trump that stole the 2016 election. He did that despite the Democrats' attempt through Hillary and the dossier to steal it. Despite it, he won. They did steal it in 2016 by flooding the post office, stuffing the ballot box with unmailed ballots marked for federal election only for Joe that suddenly appeared at 2:30 in the morning. When they stopped counting votes, oh, we got to stop at 1 o'clock. But when everyone woke up at 5 a.m., oh, what a surprise! They counted 1 million votes for Joe and none for Donald in the middle of the night. No, they didn't steal it. They stole it right up front, lying about the laptop. If the truth had been told, Biden would never have won. Even with their cheating, he won by slight margins in a couple of states where the margins would have gone the other way if people had been told about the truth about Hunter's laptop, because the laptop indicts Joe Biden repeatedly for peddling influence and selling access, both while he was in office and afterwards, taking advantage of his security clearance. It was the Democrats that stole the election. And Joe is going to prison if he doesn't resign and let Kamala be president for 1 month to pardon him after he pardons Hunter. And the mainstream media, well, Joe Scarborough is on TV saying that Bidenomics worked better than the Trump economy. I mean, how stupid do you think people are? How stupid! Gas was $2.10 under Trump. It's now anywhere from $3.80 to $7, depending upon where you are. It doubled the price. Trump is right. You can have the price, and that cost component will be removed from food, and some prices will come down, and everything will stabilize. But it will only happen if Trump is elected. The mainstream media is lying, and Scarborough standing there telling you Bidenomics works. Oh, my God! Okay, this is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. We'll be back next week with more. Don't forget to come on over to the LibertyWorksRadioNetwork.com website, get signed up as a subscribing member, and get yourself a copy of The Simple Truth About Income Tax version 2.0. It's just $6 at IRSZoom.com, which can also help you answer any IRS correspondence.